Hi, it's Asha here, and welcome in this new voiceover video that will cover a lot of inking tips for upcoming Inktober and anything beyond that. This voiceover is part of the release 55 on Patreon, and as always, thank you so much for everybody who supported and made this creation possible to be made. Voiceovers are only part of the rewards. There is much more, so make sure to check out everything that's part of the release. And if you're interested in any previous releases, then make sure to also check my Gumroad page where they're all uploaded. And now, since Inktober is coming soon and we have no more time to waste, let's begin. I divided this voiceover into two main parts. The first one being general Inktober tips, so how to tackle the challenge, what is the challenge, and anything that can help you achieve it. And the second part being tips for inking, so the actual work that we're gonna put into. There's a lot to cover, so let's go. So what is this whole Inktober? For those of you that don't know, Inktober is an online challenge that was started by Jake Parker in 2009 on Twitter. Since then, of course, it wasn't popular in the first year. The first year was just Jake Parker doing the challenge. And the main objective of the challenge was to create one drawing per day with ink. So I believe he just wanted to improve on his skills and be more consistent and definitely introduce drawing every day. So, like any challenge, it aims to help you with something. Since 2009, the challenge has blown in popularity. It's huge now with millions of submissions every year. So, of course, the more people, the more variations of the challenge, because a lot of people want to take part in it, but not everybody wants to follow the exact rules. Jake creates every year a list of prompts that anybody who wants can follow, and he is following the prompt list for his illustrations. But there are a lot of artists that make up their own lists, so if you plan on taking part in the challenge, you don't have to follow the list. You can mix the lists, you can definitely follow if you want, or you can even make up your own. There's a lot of benefits for following prompts, such as time saving. There's a lot of time we as artists waste by not knowing what to draw. So by following a list of things to draw every day, not only we leave our comfort zones, sometimes if the list is including something outside of our comfort zone, it's forcing us to go there to learn something new, and also saves us time of thinking what to draw. Well, not exactly, because we also have to think what to draw for the prompt, but it limits a little bit this creative spectrum into a much smaller one. When I take part in Inktober, I do follow some of the prompts. Sometimes they're very helpful and sometimes interesting, but I am also open to some other artists and their lists, and these are a few examples of people that already uploaded their lists online, and you can use them as inspiration. If you decide to take part in Inktober, you definitely need to have a clear mindset that yes, you can do it. And yes, you can do it. I believe in you. And I believe in everybody. But having taken part in the challenge already, I know it's not gonna be easy. And I already know some of the common mistakes that can happen. And that, of course, I made myself too. The first advice from me would be to definitely start small. Start from a small, simple drawing. And I do know that Inktober has the main goal of helping you improve and helping you be more consistent. But don't try to create a masterpiece on the first day and on each day that you're drawing. It's more important to just beat the challenge, to tackle it, to draw every day, rather than spending 23 hours of the day on one illustration and then just struggling with life and everything else. That's definitely not the objective of this challenge. So If you're in the mindset that yes, you can do it, you do need to set some limitations for yourself too. Very simple, small drawings at the beginning are definitely a good benefit. I know from my own experience that they would leave me a bit dissatisfied with my art, and they'd leave me starving to create something bigger, more detailed, something more powerful, and I just keep adding up to it, and that's a bit of a mistake, I think. Definitely keep in mind of small steps and one step at a time. As everybody in life, we do have our commitments. We need to sleep, we need to eat. Some of us need to go to work or take care of the family, cook for the family, clean up the house. I know how busy the day can get. There's so much to do. Even small things that you might not even think about, like using the bathroom, just sitting down and resting. All that time adds up, and suddenly the day is just gone in a blink of an eye. So make sure to dedicate the time for drawing as if it was your job, as if it was important. Of course, I'm not saying to ditch everything. It's like, oh, it's my drawing time, and suddenly give up cooking for the whole family, or skip the shopping, or not go to work. But if you know that there is some time during the day that you can fit in between half an hour to maybe even 2 hours of drawing, then schedule for this time. Account for it. Make sure you put it in your calendar, and from the time you set to the time you set, you just sit and draw. Make it a daily commitment, and just as important as all the other duties. So if you think your day is too full and there's just too much of everything, think of small moments that can add up. Maybe it's time before work, so you can just get up half an hour early and have a morning full of pleasant drawing exercise. Why not? It would definitely make my day better if I had to go to work after. Because drawing is just a pleasure, right? Or if this is an evening that you spend in front of the television, just resting, well, when you're drawing, you're also sitting, so it can be part of your rest. Or maybe this is the time when you're cooking dinner, and there is this half an hour where you have to wait for everything to be boiled or to get ready, then perfect, that's just your half an hour for the drawing. I did a lot of that when I was working and when my days were crazy full. I had classes after work, I had to commute, I was already tired, so drawing was really hard to fit in my day. What I did was to go to work half an hour early, and I would just sketch at work. The first pencil sketches and warm-ups I would do in the morning at work before I started working. That was me time, and I wouldn't let anybody interrupt me. My boss saw me at work and wanted me to start working straight away, but I would take my tasks and sure, I'll start at 9, which was my work time. Then on my lunch breaks, I had 1 hour long lunch breaks. I also dedicated between half an hour to even 4 hour of my lunch break for sketching. And that's how I started my first Inktober. I warmed up in morning before work, then I did pencil sketch during lunch break, and when I get back home, I already had pencil sketch and the base ready for inking, so I wasn't starting from an empty page. So for me, it wasn't just 2 hours of drawing straight, it was a few minutes here and there that added up and made me able to tackle the challenge and to do something. And one last thing are excuses. There are a lot of excuses that we just use to our own benefit, that we're tired, that there's something more important than drawing. But if you treat drawing seriously, then drawing will be just as important, and the you time which is the time just for yourself, will be just as important as anything else. And when we find this balance, and when we understand that yes, we can do it, and excuses are just something that we come up with because we're lazy and nothing else, then I'm sure the challenge will be much easier to achieve. There's a lot of people that take part in Inktober challenge, and I do remember how that influences me a lot, and how seeing everybody else's work might bring thoughts to me that, oh my god, I'm not good enough, I'm not trying hard enough, I'm worthless, my drawings are nothing to compare, why do I do what I do? I just question everything, my mood goes down, and I forget that Inktober is my personal challenge. It's not a battle, it's not a competition with anybody else. It's just for me to achieve something, for me to, even if I fail, to me just to learn, to try, and to have fun. And I believe all of us, or many of us, forget about that, and many of us get the down moments sometimes. So please don't forget that Inktober should be fun. It should be your challenge. And even though a lot of artists post online and you can see how their accounts grow, how they're popular, how they're gaining following, and how everything else is happening for everybody but not you, it's fine. That's how it is. And Inktober should be your challenge in your head, in your sketchbook, and not a battle online for numbers and likes and followers. You don't have to post online, and always keep that in mind. There are a lot of benefits of course, posting online, but I do know how internet is a jungle and how difficult it is, how one person might get recognition while the other one puts so much more work, so much more effort, and they don't. Nobody can say it's fair, and even I don't know how it works. I remember that first Inktober that I started has really helped my online following, and who knows, maybe you are one of them that found me thanks to my Inktober drawings. So this is a huge benefit and huge help for artists. There are a lot of features going on around. There are a lot of collections. I'm sure people repost on other platforms like Reddit, or just add to collections on DeviantArt, or share in Instagram stories or in posts on Instagram. And of course you can gain following, but is following your objective? Is being popular, being recognized, is that your goal? Then I think you're in the wrong place. This is not something I would ever teach anybody, and that I would advise. Online following can help if you have the mindset, if you are ready for failure as well. I did write a lot in my book, Sketch with Asha, about what's it like to be online, what's it like to be seen by others, be recognized, how much pressure it creates, how good and bad it can be. So I don't want to expand this here. It's just so much. But just one thing that I do want you to remember is Inktober is a challenge for you, for yourself, and not a battle. If you have that in mind, if you don't forget, then we're good. We're on a good track to be successful. And personal success means much, much more than any success online or any likes or any number. Trust me, if you want to try doing the challenge offline, I strongly recommend that. It's also amazing. The difference between drawing number 1 and number 30 is always visible. There is no way to not improve with 30 drawings, so the challenge is very satisfying, and just the feeling that yes, I managed, I did something, helps you with other challenges and helps you to get better and push forward. If you do decide to post your drawings online on any social media platform, I have one more tip for you. Do account time of your drawing time for taking a good photograph or a scan and editing your drawing. The presentation is part of online portfolio. So you wouldn't just snap a photo in the dark room with a flashlight as your main light source, because that's a bit unprofessional. So make sure to professionally approach and present your artwork. You want it to look the best. You want it to look what it looks like, and with maybe some interesting settings, some of your tools next to your drawing if you want to display what you drew with and share with others. But I do see a lot of photographs where the drawing is just such a tiny piece of paper in the middle of the photo and decoration is taking 90% of it. I think this is something that has gone too far, and I don't want to say anything negative about it. It's just, I think it takes away from the drawing more than it adds. So simple decorations, sure. Good lighting, maybe take pictures during the day by the window where there's the best lighting if you can't edit in Photoshop. Or if you can brighten up pictures, add some light in Photoshop, then yes, I do recommend that. This is what I do because most of the pictures I just take at night. And don't forget to just be professional. I don't want to discourage anybody, but just taking a photo and posting online takes me from half an hour to an hour on the day that I make a drawing and make a post about it. So this is quite some time. It's not just 1 minute of snapping a photo and putting it online. It takes some effort. So let's assume we got perfect scenario here, that you had a perfect day, you managed to do your Inktober drawing on prompt, you're happy with the result, and the day is still young. It's just perfect, right? So don't sit on the throne and pretend to be a king then. If you have energy, start another drawing. I know it might not seem like a good thing, but a lot of artists, cheat. Not cheat as cheat, but they started their Inktober probably in August or September, and they have worked through, they have many drawings ready by the time Inktober comes. And that creates pressure for others. Like, we see them pump out masterpieces every day. It's like, oh, wait, what's happening? How did they do it in a day? How did they do it in a few hours? And how did they manage? Some of artists work really fast, some work slowlier. Some need more time. Sometimes we just have a bad day of drawing and we can spend many hours and nothing comes out of it. Yes, this happens. So don't pressure yourself about this too much. And on a good day, if you have more time left, if you have more energy, start another drawing. It's fine. I don't think many people are ahead of the challenge usually. Everybody is just always behind. But you can be different. For you, you can have some drawings stashed for those worst days to be ready to post online if you're doing the challenge online, or to just fill in your sketchbook with 30 drawings if this is your objective. And I think these are all my Inktober tips for now. And now let's move to the second part, which is actual inking. What can I advise you when you already have your paper and pen ready? Okay, here we go. And let's start from discussing the tools. In my opinion, it's best to limit the tools to the minimum. I would probably just use 3 inking pens or 2 and set for one type of paper. And I strongly recommend to choose the paper that's gonna work for you, and not a printer paper and not some crappy notebook paper with squares or lines. Make sure it's a nice paper that makes drawing pleasant and not a painful experience, and that will add value to your ink drawing too. The tools that I would use would probably be an inking pen of thickness 0.05 or 0.1, and a thicker one for the outline or for just thicker lines like 0.3, for example. If I wanted to black out a lot, I would black it out with either brush and actual ink, or maybe a Sharpie pen, which are thicker and make blacking out much easier than a thin pen would. For paper, I usually stick to moleskin paper. It's a really nice sketchbook, good for ink. It's thin but thick enough. The large, which is A5 sketchbook size, I think it's just perfect for sketches. Or my first Inktober was done in a much smaller one, like a 6 size notebook, and it worked for me back then, but I think now I need a bit more space. And I'm not recommending these tools because of some sponsorship or endorsement. It's just I really like Copic multiliners and I really like moleskin paper, and I know how troublesome other papers can be, and I just don't know any other papers, so this is my recommendation for you. But I'm sure if you're already familiar with inking, you might have your own favorites. It's just harsh or vellum papers or watercolor papers are really hard to ink on. Ink and pen don't flow as smoothly on those surfaces, and they scratch a lot, so it's problematic for me. Moleskin paper is really smooth and makes inking and drawing easy. But for examples here and some of the videos, you can see I'm drawing on postcards. And the postcards have the worst paper ever. It's a nightmare. It's glossy paper. And oh my god, it's such a nightmare. But yeah, I regretted when I was starting my first drawing, or maybe first 15 or 20 drawings. I was regretting choosing this paper so much, and like, oh my god, why is drawing so hard on it? But I managed, and when I did my 50th or 70th drawing, and everything was just easier because I got used to the paper and I just knew how to work on it. It didn't bother me as much. Well, I know that on my postcard paper, which is glossy, I'm not able to do sketches with pencil because pencil is really hard to erase. And I do sketch with pencil still, but I make it very delicate and just really basic lines that I need for an under sketch. I wouldn't go into details. All the details are added in the inking process. But just based on my experience, it proves that anything can work when you just know how to work with the tools that you have. A bit related to the previous step about the tools as well, I would limit my color palette. Definitely having a whole wide spectrum of 358 Copic colors, or I don't know, however many inks, or just a lot of colors will not help you tackle the challenge that has limited time on it, and the time is ticking. Usually colored illustrations take me more than a day, so I don't know if I would be able to create something just in a day and every day of the month. So Inktober is also nice to draw simple, maybe just black and white, maybe just the line art, no colors. That will give you many line arts to color later throughout the year, or in just other months outside of Inktober. And maybe, just maybe, you keep abusing just one color. Like me, I have my favorite pink, right? So set a palette of one color every day, a different one, which I was always thinking of making. I think I started Inktober this theme once, but then I failed really bad because of the complexity of illustrations that I was trying to pull out every day. I made them too difficult, and it was taking me way too much time to complete an illustration. So I did limit color palettes, but I didn't limit anything else. I made them too difficult and I didn't manage. But I think even on social media it could look nice if all the drawings are consistent and they are not too detailed. They are just inks with one color and every time a different color. Damn, I think that would look cool. Maybe I'll try it again. But I know I'm making this video just to help everybody with Inktober, but I don't know if I'm gonna take part in it myself. October is looking like quite a busy month for me. So we'll see. Maybe I'll do something simple. Now a bit about the lines. This might sound a bit vague to you, but be confident. And not just confident in believing that you can tackle the challenge, but also in drawing. I know that I sometimes sit in front of the paper with such a nice sketch on it, like, oh, I'm so proud of the sketch. I'll totally mess up when I ink. And that stops me from inking. Like, why would I even be scared of inking? Don't I want to improve, right? Isn't this what I made the sketch for? But unfortunately, it does stop me. So be brave and be confident also means not to be afraid to mess up. It's fine to mess up. Well, I'm sure it happened to everybody, and most definitely at the beginning of your drawing career. Messing up is such a huge part. So don't be scared to mess up. There's always ways to start over. You can transfer the sketch, you can copy it, or you can scan it before you start inking. So the next step could be printing it and trying again if you really are scared of messing up, but I don't think anybody should be. Also, if you do mess up, maybe try to fix it or try to go along with what happened. That can also push your skill a bit further and teach you something. Teach you how to think fast and how to find solutions in situations that look like just a disaster, like, oh my god, I messed up, what do I do? Well, you can always try to fix it and see what you can do. And as I said, it was supposed to be about lines. The confidence also shows in the lines. If you're not confident and if you pull the pen really slowly, the line is gonna be shaky. If you make short lines and you're not confident, the lines is gonna look hairy. So the confidence does show up in lines a lot. Just put it down, just make the statement, just draw it, just do it. And it might not be easy with the first drawing, but I'm sure it will sync with drawing number 10 or 20. The lines will look much different. And for me, it's definitely what happened when I was drawing the postcards. I hated the paper at the beginning. I hated what it's looking like. I made so many mistakes. I was like, I'm so unhappy, I'll just start over. And yeah, out of 70 or even more postcards that I drew that month, I threw away many more of them. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes it is just a mess, but it's a learning curve. So when I made a mistake and I realized about it, that definitely teaches me how to avoid it in the future. So don't be scared to mess up, it's fine. How many of you have heard about cross-hatching? Well, I'm pretty sure a lot of you. Well, I heard of cross-hatching too, but I just don't like this technique. I do not use it. If I want to draw shadow with ink, I would just black it out, or I would, like you can see in some of the postcards, when I was trying to draw shadow, I would just draw with lines. And my tip in here is to draw lines in one direction. So if I was keeping lines slanted to the left, and all the other shadows that I put in the same illustration, I would try to make the same angle of the line. But if you want to research cross-hatching, sure, go to Google, because I've never used it, and unfortunately I cannot teach any of that, or I cannot give any advice about that. I'm just not saying it's bad. When cross-hatching is done really well, it definitely can look impressive. I just never mastered this technique. In my simple postcard ink drawings, you can see how, as I mentioned before, I'm using 2 pens to diversify line thickness. And my other tip would be to diversify line thickness. I use a thinner line to draw the whole illustration usually, and to draw smaller details. And then I take out the thicker pen and maybe draw the line art of the whole shape of the figure, or of specific elements like separating clothes from the body. I would use thicker line there. I've watched a lot of videos and tutorials how people say much more difficult stuff about thickening lines or where to thicken them. Like objects closer to the viewer should have thicker lines and further away should have thinner lines, but no, that's not something I use or I do. I just thicken the outline, and I think it does the job. It actually looks really good in my opinion, so I'm happy. When talking about lines and diversity, one more thing that comes to my mind is unfinished lines. So a line that has breaks in the middle. When drawing a straight line, you don't have to draw it from beginning to an end. You can draw just the beginning and just the end and leave some part of the lines not drawn. And it has its charm, to be honest. I do like unfinished lines too. Mainly as hair strands or in hair, you can see me use these, or when drawing clothing folds. Sometimes I draw a line of the fold at the beginning and at the end, but sometimes I draw the line at the beginning and at the end, but in the middle I leave it unfinished. But the clothing fold is still visible as a clothing fold, so it just has its charm. There is this magical tool that can help you a lot when inking, and it's a white gel pen or white acrylic paint or white acrylic pens. There are just a lot of white tools. I use gel pens because they're easy, they're fine, and I don't have to carry brush and a jar of paint with me every time. I do like Posca pen and jelly roll pen. They are not perfect, they do not cover black entirely, but they definitely help and do their job well. So if there are some details in your illustrations that are more like a white detail on a black background, it's very hard to draw around the white outline, to leave it out as paper white. So sometimes I would go for coloring the whole, let's say I drew a kimono in flowery pattern. I would cover up the kimono or the clothes in black with Sharpie, and then on top I would draw with white to bring the details back, to draw the details instead of leaving them as white as paper, because that will take me much more time and will require much more precision to avoid not to color the line in. So this is just another tool that can be used to your benefit. I would not recommend it to cover up mistakes because this can be very easily overdone, but in small cases for sure it can also cover up mistakes, or when you went outside of the line where you didn't want to, sure, it can also help there too. And another thing that I'm sure many of you heard of, which is less is more. And what does that mean? That means sometimes the less you put speaks as much more than what you did. So how can we apply that to ink drawings? I would definitely avoid of drawing hundreds of eyelashes, and I would definitely avoid drawing all the hair strands or trying to color the hair flow with many lines, every hair separate. Use flat surfaces. It's definitely not necessary to overdo, put too many lines, too much details, everything super detailed and complex. We're trying to save time here, we're trying to complete one drawing a day. Make it small, make it simple, and don't overthink too much, don't stress, don't pressure yourself. With the 70 postcards that you can see in the photo or in the video, it's I found it really hard to limit myself, but not only the tools were limiting me, so the pens that I was using, the paper was limiting me, the space because postcards are tiny. This was helping me a lot to not overwork my illustrations and to definitely improve. Because if I was adding more and more details to all of my illustrations, I'm not sure if I would be able to see improvement. Well, the illustrations will be much more detailed, but from when we compare simple illustration to a detailed one, of course, detailed one needs much more time. Of course, it has much more details, so it's just very difficult to compare. But if we keep stay on theme and do a lot of similar or a lot of the same, it's much easier to compare. So after drawing 70 or more, I really lost track of it, of those postcards. I know that with the first one, it took me a lot of time. I erased a lot, even though it was hard. I started over. It took me half an hour to draw one, or even an hour. But the 70th one took me maybe 10 minutes to draw. But this way, I'm able to judge my improvement. And this way, I can see what's become much easier to me, that I'm much less scared of drawing, that I'm faster, that the lines are more delicate but more confident. So it's a good part of the challenge to just keep yourself limited and not constantly add up to it. And I think I have shared with you everything I could about Inktober and about inking. And with this very tired voice, because that was a lot to say, I wish you good luck. I recommend everybody to take part of the challenge. If Inktober is good because it keeps everybody together and it keeps some constraints, but it doesn't have to be October that you draw in. You can start today. You can be already doing it. Maybe you just started but not doing it entirely correct. So revise your process and have fun. Definitely don't forget about this one. Drawing must be fun. It shouldn't be painful or unpleasant experience. Keep breathing deeply and have your back straight. I don't know, probably only 1% of artists do that. We forget to breathe and sit straight. But do it, and I believe in you. Have fun and good luck. Until next time.